Thank you. Mr. Bonham.
Great. Thank you, Chair, members. My name is Chuck Bonham, Director of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Let me start with a quick detour to an item that's unrelated to the agenda. I just want to thank leadership in both parties in the legislative branch and all the relevant staff and offices and committees, particularly Senator Hannah Beth Jackson and Assemblymember Das Williams. You may know we're contemporaneously dealing with a major oil spill outside Santa Barbara that has occupied some of my time, so I apologize if my remarks are a little bit disorganized. We held a briefing with staff yesterday afternoon, the administration, me and Director Ghilarducci, about current events, and we'll continue to keep that line of communication open with y'all.
Do you want to speak to it more, Chuck? You can if you like.
It's a significant event. The governor has already declared a state of emergency in Santa Barbara. We've mobilized. There's a unified command of over 200 federal and state highly trained experts, including about 60 oil experts on behalf of the staff. We're on it. We're all in. We'll be there until this is dealt with.
Thank you for that.
You bet. So now let me turn to this particular series of staff comments and recommendations on page 7 of the agenda.
Yeah.
Our department is not part of the May revise funding proposal, but I remind you, you have already, in our current fiscal year and our go-forward fiscal year, allocated about $54 million for drought response for fish and wildlife. After my comments, I will hand a report to the Sergeant of Arms. We have done 3 quarterly reports tracking every penny we've spent. It describes investments, particularly in areas like the Pacific Flyway. So we've been conceptualizing the drought money you've been appropriating for us as our main way to immediately respond to risks.
Okay.
We also know that we can use some of the drought funding you've given us through our grant making. So just last year, we moved about $14 million through our fisheries grant program. We funded 63 projects. And we funded 23 projects specifically with about $4 million for drought purposes. You can do a lot of non-flow habitat-related projects which actually turn out to have drought benefit. You can do storage tanks for rural residential. You can remove migration barriers. You can do riparian planting. So we've invested a good portion of this drought money you've given us into that arena. As for Prop 1, we are also viewing Prop 1 as an immediacy need. We're on track at the department and the Wildlife Conservation Board to have done our guidelines, have issued grant solicitations, and be approving our first grants by the end of this calendar year. So we think we can take our current Prop 1 structure and slot in immediacy needs under that rubric as well. I'll end with a couple of comments about the question, do the governor's Proposition 1 priorities focus on immediate needs such as fish screens and flyways? I think so, because the Water Action Plan has 2 specific actions. One is about dealing with migration barriers, and another is dealing with water for waterfowl. We will use the Water Action Plan as scoring criteria when we're evaluating applications under competitive grant making. If applicants can show the purposes consistent with those actions, bonus points, if you will. So we've factored in that priority system. Same is true for screens, I believe. I will tell you on the staff recommendations, it makes me nervous, but I have not yet seen how trailer bill language might be written around prioritization. Here's why, and I'll share my concern. It's just a broad one. You know that Prop 1 in Section 79714B has a prohibition on the legislator appropriating for specific projects. I hope to honor that statutory language. I understand the need for programmatic prioritization, but I think through our solicitation, which we expect to go out to stakeholders with, we will use each solicitation to highlight particular priorities in any given cycle. We know the flyway, and we know fish screens are likely to be high priorities. So I think the structure can facilitate that kind of annual prioritization dialogue between you, us, and stakeholders. With regards to the flyway money that would be called from the Natural Resource Agency's component of Proposition 1. Of course, the agency should respond, but I'll share with you what I shared with my colleagues in the joint venture. I'm worried that if one part of the state obligation component of Proposition 1 makes a call for a portion of the money, then the next part, Salton Sea or Klamath, will begin to ask, why not us? And in my judgment, we've been trying to stand up the grant making while giving ourselves a year space to work with the joint venture to think through best how to use that settlement fund. So that's my policy comment. I understand the pressure and emphasis on the flyway immediately.
Okay. All right. Further comments? Okay. Let's, yes, Senator Nielsen.
Director Bonham, I talked to the chair about this, and I'm prepared to request $200,000 for, enhancing our hatchery abilities. We've been pretty devastated in the spawning, I believe. At least that's what I hear. And this would be to replenish our hatchery capacities and to get the fry out of those hatcheries to put into the rivers. Are you aware of that kind of a possibility? Do you see that need?
Senator, first, let me thank each of you for y'all's focus on fish and wildlife during this drought. I am aware of the general idea about potentially additional funding for our mitigation hatcheries, which were designed to mitigate the loss of historical habitat when we constructed our network of dams. I just remind you, we have spent a significant portion of that $54 million already on salmon and hatchery-related issues. Just last week, we trucked, again, 30 million smolts out of the combined federal-state system down into the bay.
30 million?
Smolts, to avoid lethal conditions and year-class loss. We've networked the whole Sacramento around Redding up with a new system of temperature monitors. We've gone to our own hatcheries and invested much of the drought money into chillers. We've purchased assets like specialized trucks to deal with evacuation and movement needs of hatchery fish if possible. I have been speaking to the commercial fishing community. I know they're very worried about a likely, and I think it's likely, commercial fishery disaster declaration in 2 or 3 years from now. So we understand the potential value of a small augmentation. I'm in my mind not yet clear on most appropriate fund source. Of course, we need to have conversations with.
Nor am I, Director Bonham. That could be loan funds or bond funds, general fund. I'm not sure either.
So on this item, I guess I would summarize it by saying we'd like to continue a discussion.
Do you think you could help us with some clarity within the conference committee and that soon?
We'll work with the Department of Finance on that promptly.
If you'd be so kind, I'd like to continue the dialogue as it moves to conference then.
Thank you. And I'd like to raise an issue as well, Director Bonham. I want to ask about Clear Lake, which is an issue that came. I don't represent Clear Lake, but know it well because it is the watershed of Cache Creek. But it was brought to me that there's serious concern about the water quality in the lake, but also about invasive species, which has been on, certainly there's been a lot of attention to that and money appropriated for the Delta area, which is a very serious problem and continues to be. I'm curious about what the department might need to work on the Clear Lake issue and whether any of that would be coming out of some of this money.
Okay.
Or some other money.
Let me demur on offering anything like a budget relative to the lake and tell you that I think it was this week, but it might have been last. I was sitting next to Assemblymember Dodd on the Assembly Subcommittee side.
Assembly is proposed this.
And we had a very engaging discussion with Subcommittee Chair Bloom. I'm in a rock and a hard place, as I said to Mr. Dodd. The department cares about Clear Lake. There are a variety of reasons why it's now in a more degraded state than it should be. By the same token, the proposed fund source on the Assembly side, I have said we believe is an inappropriate fund source. They're proposing using our Fish and Game Preservation Fund. There are a variety of reasons we could talk about that. I don't think it's appropriate for your agenda. So we acknowledge a need, but by the same token, I'm trying to manage a budget, which is one of the more complicated. The legislative body told me 3 years ago, get your budget sorted out systematically, and I'm hypersensitive to very, substantively compelling need done in a way that doesn't, allow me to think across our whole budget, if you will. So I believe that Clear Lake and the projects that might come from it could be very competitive in Proposition 1. I've told that to Mr. Dodd and Senator McGuire. And just on May 8th, I asked high-level regional staff for us to go to Clear Lake, sit down with county supervisors and all the affected stakeholders, and they came up with a need to create a Clear Lake Resource Conservation District as one of the long-term fundamental flaws right now, and we support that idea and have started that conversation with Mr. Dodd's office.
Okay, I would like to, along with Senator Nielsen, move something through to continue the discussion since it was raised by the Assembly, and let's continue that discussion. I would make a recommendation of $1 million, which was what the Assembly did, and then the discussion will continue along with
Madam Chair, just a point of clarification on that action. The Assembly did move the $1 million, so by taking a corresponding action, that would place it not in conference from a difference of.
Oh, all right, we'll do that minus.
Pick a half a number.
We'll do that minus, what is it? 2,000. So that will push it into conference. All right. Let's go
I will
back to the
support the chair in that, but I will indicate as a member of the conference committee, it'll be an area of great sympathy to me, having formally and even fairly recently represented Clear Lake again, so albeit this time briefly. But I love Clear Lake, and I'd like to help you on that, Senator.
Thank you.
And
Discussion should happen, I believe.
one more comment, if I
Yes.
may, on the Clear Lake issue.
Yeah.
Last week, Finance did have offer some testimony on this item. We did express some concerns related to some recent legislation and a vote that was not passed in that area to provide funding for the Clear Lake. So we are a little concerned
More
about.
specific about that, Mr. Schaffner.
There was a local vote to create an assessment district to provide funding to deal with some of the invasive species issues in Clear Lake. I think that vote required a 2/3 approval. It did not pass. So we are concerned about some precedents backfilling a local tax initiative with state funds.
Yeah. You do know that Lake County is probably one of the poorest counties in the entire state, and it is the water supply, Clear Lake for Cache Creek, for other counties. So I'm inclined to move this item forward.
Madam Chair, I would concur, but would you allow me to then add the 200,000 for the fish at the hatchery so that we can then go to conference?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. All right, so before we vote on that, let's go back to well, actually, let's have a vote on those two items, and then we'll go back to the, so Senator Nielsen, do you want to make that motion for both items? All right, then we're looking at moving the Clear Lake $1 million minus 2,000 forward, as well as the 200,000 for the hatchery discussion. Those discussions then will continue through the conference committee. All right, so let's vote.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? Aye. Senator Pavley?
Aye, for the purpose of discussion.
Indeed, indeed. All right, let's go back to the trailer bill language and the action on these items. First of all, are there any questions on any of this for our three testifiers. Senator?
Sure. I just had a question, clarification, and focused on the cap and trade portion of it. And I noticed the CEC is, are they here? CEC? Because they had appliance rebates in the technology program. Someone is moving forward. Okay. And while they're coming up, Director Cowan, could you articulate for me a little bit about the water energy grant programs and how that's used? And the success, you've already expended some money out the door, correct?
Correct.
And so now I'm thinking about the LAO's recommendation on how that money has already been spent and what was its intended purpose, and did we accomplish that result?
So to the best of my knowledge, Senator Pavley, we've used these funds for two fairly distinct purposes up until now. One for a grant program for local agencies that put forward proposals that provide for energy, water efficiency projects and programs. And
this is agricultural areas primarily?
no, I believe it also extends to urban areas. So that has been a grant program. We made awards earlier this year for the first tranche of money that the department was appropriated for that purpose. We also have had specific appropriations for improving energy efficiency within the State Water Project and have used funds for improving the efficiency of turbines within one of our pump generating plants.
The agricultural water use efficiency, is that part of this?
I believe that is a general, well, I take that back.
Well, it's under the Department of Water Resources, that's why I was sort of. Am I reading that correctly on page 5?
You are, and I apologize for not being more informed on this specific program.
That's why we're here.
Back to you.
Because I was curious how the money was being expended and what the results were on that one. So if we don't have that information now, maybe you could get that to me, hopefully by tomorrow, if possible. And here's my concern. I just wondered how you'd measure that. So if you extend monies to the agricultural sector for efficiency, how do you, let alone the legal nexus on cap and trade, how do you quantify the benefits of the results? Are you saving water?
With the senator's permission, I have staff here that can respond a little better than I've been able to.
Welcome.
Senator, if I know what you're looking at there, if you're looking at the LAO's table, it references, I believe, both the Department of Water Resources and the Department of Food and Agriculture in one category. The agricultural water use efficiency to the Department of Water Resources is Proposition 1 funding. The cap and trade discussion, I believe, is with the Department of Food and Agriculture, so that is not.
Oh, no money's been expended.
Not from the Department of Water Resources. I wouldn't want to speak to the Department of Food and Ag's proposal.
There must be a program then that I'm thinking about where money had been expended, and it was for generally the right reasons on reducing, I guess, energy and water conservation was the goal. But I had heard that all the savings of water were just used to plant additional crops. So I was
I'm going to
wondering
defer to the Department of Finance.
how you quantified success.
Matt Almy, Department of Finance. If you're referring to the chart, as Mr. Shumke indicated about the ag efficiency, the food and ag program is the SWEEP program. That's what it was referring to, and it's a continuation of both the money that the legislature appropriated last year for ag efficiency, and then as part of the emergency drought package, there was a total of $10 million that the legislature appropriated for ag efficiency. So what the May revision proposes is a continuation of that program, as well as a expansion of a total of $40 million for that existing program. What I would say is that that was one of the first programs that the Air Board worked with the Department of Food and Ag on, a cap and trade expenditure record. And as part of the process that the Air Board does in terms of its oversight, it develops an expenditure record where each department, when establishing a program, lays out how it results in emission reductions. And so this is one of those programs that reduces greenhouse gas emissions, but also has water conservation benefits.
So the water conservation benefits achieved is spelled out somewhere in the analysis of the program?
Yeah, so
Is it actual gallons of water that are saved, and is it saved to just, I'd heard from several sources that actually there's really no water savings because it's just shifted to use for planting additional crops.
I would have to defer to
Conversion
the
of crops.
Department of Food and Ag on that particular piece. All I can
I
say.
just want to make sure
Okay.
we don't, we know what we're getting. So if it's falling into the cap and trade, that may become problematic. Or if you're using Prop 1 monies.
Sure.
You don't want to give residents additional money to plant more lawn if we save more water.
Again, on the details of that particular program, I would have to defer to Food and Ag. All I can say is through the expenditure record process, there's a accountability structure, an upfront accountability structure in place that allows that provides an assurance that the programs reduce emissions and such.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
and let me just,
Yeah.
it seems to me what Fran is getting at, which is important, is if there is conservation program for agriculture that results in better irrigation and therefore savings of an increment of water, does it stay in the river? Does it stay in the stream? Do we have any restriction at all on it? Or can it be used by the landowner to plant more crops?
I
mean,
I'd have to
that's-
get back to you on that.
When you're using public money to make those changes. So the increment of water Chuck, have you thought about that?
I've just had
For the
I'm
fish?
curious about this, and maybe it's
Yeah, I don't
a
know.
longer discussion, and that really screams out for the need as money is flying out the door. Demonstrate purposes that we go back and really look at it through the audit process, whether it accomplished the objectives intended.
Yes, Senator Chair, my recommendation is on the potential use of Prop 1 for this area, use of funds would be compliant with the restrictions in Prop 1, which require, funding to be used for additive benefit, if you will, on the fish and wildlife front. So we'll work across our departmental silos to confirm that. And then with regards to cap and trade, we understand completely permanence, additionality, and all the metrics.
All the correct words.
We all have that.
He's got it. It's the permanence. May we outlive this program. So one other question for the Energy Commission, and then I'll be quiet. Who you were here for the Energy Commission? Two questions. I'm very supportive of the water energy efficient appliance rebates. Has the Energy Commission been made aware of the concern by Home Depot and other people that will be implementing the rebate system about their concern that they can't meet the lavatory faucet 1.2 GPM flow because it's not available yet, and they have no problem with getting there. They would like a delay of having to achieve that low flow 1.2 GPM faucet to be sold till January 1st, 2017, because they're our partners in rolling out these rebates. And so they have 1.5s ready to go. They don't have the other. It's not technologically even in the market.
Mark Hutchison, the Deputy Director for Administration for the Energy Commission. Let me first apologize. We weren't anticipating being on the agenda. Otherwise, our Executive Director, Oglesby, would certainly have been here to testify. So I'll do my best to respond to your response. And we are aware of the supply concerns. And we are certainly working with industry to figure out how we can make that or find that product and make it available. So we are researching the issue as we speak.
Okay. And then maybe I'll save it for Mr. Oglesby, just a definition or description of the technology program. Do you have any clue? I mean, I'll ask Mr. Oglesby if that's better.
Yeah, we can certainly get back to you on that.
Just wanting to make sure how we measure results in emission reductions by investing in technology.
Okay, we'll certainly follow up with you.
Thanks.
Senator Pavley, if I could.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm hesitant to bring this up and expand this debate because I don't have a recommendation or a solution for you, but I would note that as you all consider these issues about what happens to the savings, the same issue really applies to most of our water use efficiency programs, including those in the urban sector. Appliance rebates, general water use conservation programs, we don't have requirements that those water savings remain in the river, if you will, or there be reduced exports or extractions from the natural system as a result of those programs. The concept, I think, as I understand it anyway, is just to provide for general improvement in the way we use water throughout the state. So I just offer that as part of the
Part of the discussion or the bigger thinking. It's just how you define success.
Right.
And if we're trying to save water, I didn't know how we were accomplishing that. All right, thank you. I will end that discussion.
Can I just follow up on that? Director Cowan, if you harden the demand further, that's an inadvertent and not wise consequence of the policy. So there are probably ways to do that. Whatever. Maybe a policy bill, although I don't think so. Yes, Senator Nielsen.
Point on that note, and I remember a week or so ago, Chair Marcus here kind of responding on this point. The agricultural community has always conserved, and particularly now, and the governor has clearly stated this too, some are getting zero. And whatever they are getting, they're growing food, and that's for everybody, urban people, but more than rural people. So the agriculture productivity, you know, it just doesn't go on the market and in the bank for the farmers. It's translated into food for human beings. That is required for human beings. So I'd be careful about how we are trying to compromise the ability to provide food for our citizens.
All right. My only concern on that issue is that if we are in a drought emergency, then where the money goes, that is the most efficient and effective to save the water. So just raising the issue about how one deals with that in agriculture and the urban areas for that matter, and the commercial sector is important. If we're going to put public money into something, we're going to want a result. It seems to me the public has a right to demand that. So that's all. All right, let's move to action.
Madam Chair.
First, we're going to be separating out the motions. So the first motion would be to appropriate all the drought funding with the exception of the water board funding for the Delta water quality supply. That's the $1.4 million. So that's the first motion.
So moved.
Moved by Senator Pavley. Please call the roll. Oh, wait a minute. Is there public comment on any of these issues? All right.
Ellen Moradi, Department of Finance. We just want to say that we have not had the opportunity to take a look at this and consider the implications. So
No, hang on. Wait till we're all done. Okay, all right. So that was the first motion, all the drought funding with the exception of the $1.4 million for the water board on that particular area. So please call the roll.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? Aye. Senator Pavley?
Aye.
All right, 3-0. That passes. Now then, the motion is $1.4 million for the water board for that particular area that was left out. So is there a motion to that?
So moved.
Been moved by Senator Pavley. Please call the roll.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? Aye. Senator Pavley?
Aye.
3-0. Why? Yes. All right, let's do the roll again.
Senator Wolk?
Aye?
Senator Nielsen? Senator Pavley?
Aye.
All right, that passes 2 to 1.